Flyers, red hot, ripped off 9 straight, look to make it 10 tonight against Colorado. Scott Burnside does a great job with ESPN, covers hockey. They're NHL writer for ESPN, ESPN.com. Kind enough to join us for a couple moments. And Scott, appreciate a couple moments, pal. How you been? See, we can punch him up. It's just, There we go. Hey, Scott, you there, pal?
I am indeed. Yeah, I was going to say I feel good, but not as good as the Flyers. But I'm not sure anyone is as good as the Flyers these days.
Listen, they're playing very good hockey. They get the ghost back tonight. Dozato's going to take Strite's place. Voracek has been on fire as well. 3 goals and 6 assists over the last 4 games, and Mason's been strong between the pipes. And you to me, it's Schenn. That's the catalyst I look at during this streak. And I'm just wondering, he had that big overtime goal Sunday against Detroit. What do you make of the hot start with the Flyers? I mean, would you consider them a legitimate team right now, like a playoff-ready team?
Well, yeah. I mean, no one wins 9 games in a row without being legitimate. I mean, that's, for me, the interesting part will be, when the streak ends, and,
right.
Inevitably it will end. What happens? Is it the kind of thing where, we've seen teams, go well for a week or 2 weeks or maybe even 3 weeks, and then find that that they fall back for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and that's the the old water finding its own level. I will say, at the beginning of the year, I found it difficult to really assess what to make of the Flyers. I had to do the Metropolitan Division preview, maybe because they dislike me at ESPN, because that's the hardest division.
Very competitive.
I really struggled with what to do with a bunch of teams, but specifically the Flyers, and given how they surged to a playoff spot last year, really gave Washington all they could handle in the first round in 6 games. I thought there was going to be some step back, especially with Ron Hextall and Dave Hakstol really committed to the youth movement. When you see guys like Provorov and Konechny coming into the opening night lineup to join guys like Gosvier, and so it's a very young team. And I thought they might fall back and maybe fall outside the playoff bubble, but this goes back to last year. I've banged this drum to no avail, as it turned out. But I felt that Dave Hakstol should have been a finalist for the Jack Adams as Coach of the Year. I
agree.
Given after the fairly rough start, and understandable given a coach who coached 12 or 13 years or whatever it was at the University of North Dakota, and his first turn through the NHL, really learning the game at the NHL level, learning the competition, and to get in the playoffs, I thought was a remarkable achievement. And I think what we've seen with this stretch and with the way the Flyers have played is that Dave Hakstol is the real deal. He is a bona fide NHL coach, and he has got, it's not perfect, right? I mean, the goaltending, Mason's been very good, but there have been some ups and downs there in goals. In fact, it's been better, oddly enough, since Michael Neuwirth got hurt. What we've seen from both Claude Giroux and Jacob Voracek this year, marked departure from last year. They are the true leaders of that team. Wayne Simmons, for me, you talked about Braden Schenn, agreed in terms of the catalyst in this streak. But for me, Wayne Simmons might be the most underappreciated power forward in the NHL. He is a machine. He's, he does it all. He's so well respected around the NHL and within that locker room. He's the guy that really, I think, drives the bus in terms of the emotional core of that team. So it's just, they've got it all going on now. And to your, I'm sort of rambling around to the end, to getting to your question. Yeah, I think they are a legitimate team. Now, are they guaranteed a playoff spot? Well, of course, way too early for that. But, you look at the standings right now, and the 9-point bulge over New Jersey. Now, the Devils have 3 games in hand, but still locked into a wild card spot in a battle with the rest of the top teams in the Metropolitan Division. If the Flyers don't make the playoffs, they have nobody to blame but themselves.
Yeah, it's a great point, and the Devils struggling a little bit. They've dropped 3 straight. I'm just wondering, too, in years past, we've always talked about the Flyers, at times, their inability to kill off the power play, their inability to score when they had the man advantage. And this year, you look at what they're doing on the power play, ranked 2nd in the league. So I also think that's also been a catalyst, right? We're seeing them timely opportunities, getting goals when they need goals, and taking advantage of it.
Yeah, there's no question. And you look at, historically, teams that do have long-term success and that sort of lock themselves into playoff spots are the teams that have success on special teams and on both sides of the special teams puck. So to see the Flyers being able to do that, and it's a chicken-egg thing. is it part of the system? Is this Dave Hakstol in his second year implementing systems in his coaching staff, finding the right way to, set up the attack? Which guys are going to shoot the puck? Who's going to be doing it? Or is it your leaders, guys like Voracek and Claude Giroux, who have sometimes struggled, in man advantage situations? It was a difficult year for Jacob Voracek last year. So is it, the cream of your roster rising to the top and doing what we know they're capable of? So maybe a little bit of both, but certainly it's important, and I think it's been a key part to what they've accomplished during this streak and really all year. It sure some ups and downs, but I think the way they've won games, which has been varied and different throughout this streak, again, that's the mark of a good team too. It's not just one thing. It's not just Steve Mason every single night standing on his head, or every single night Claude Giroux, coming up with a goal and 2 assists. It is a true team effort up and down the lineup.
Scott Burnside, kind enough to join us for a couple moments, covers the NHL for ESPN, ESPN.com. The old adage in hockey, if you have 2 goalies, you don't really have a number 1 goalie. I don't know. Is that the case really right now in New York with the Rangers? They went to Ronta for the 4th straight time Tuesday night against his former team in Chicago. They lose that one 2-1, snaps his streak. And you look at Lundqvist, he's never really been bypassed, I don't think, 4 consecutive times in a decade plus career, 12 years. And I don't know if it's bothering him or not. I think in hockey, you got to ride the hot hand. You got to go with the hot goaltender. But is this going to be a problem going forward here with the Rangers?
Well, no. It only becomes a problem if Henrik Lundqvist doesn't regain the form that we know and expect of Henrik Lundqvist. And, we just haven't seen that, and certainly through the last 4 or 6 weeks. The numbers a little bit off, the odd hiccup here and there on bad angle goals and playing the puck and things like that. The question for me is, when he gets back in, which I assume, whether it's the next game or the next game, does he reassert himself? And, he sort of asked the question, knowing Henrik Lundqvist a little bit, this must be killing him, right?
No doubt.
He's the ultimate team guy, but he is the face of the franchise. He wants desperately to win a cup. He understands that, and I think it's fair to say, if they are going to win a cup, he's going to be the guy. He has to be the guy that's going to drive the bus. They got also close in 14. He wants very, very much to get back there. And Antti Raanta, good for him to, it's funny that you saw 2 goalies in that game against Chicago who are really auditioning for full-time jobs somewhere, right? It's Scott Darling is not going to be the starter in Chicago when Corey Crawford gets back, and ultimately Antti Raanta will give way to Henrik Lundqvist. But there may be starting roles for them somewhere else, just as we saw Cam Talbot take over the starting job in Edmonton based on his play in New York. For me, I think you have to give Alain Vigneault, the head coach in New York, absolute credit for making this call. The easy call is to go back to Henrik Lundqvist after 3 games
it's the popular choice, right? And that's always the toughest one to make, because you do have to go with you got to go with the solid goaltender. You got to win games.
Well, and I think what it says to the rest of the people in that dressing room, listen, you come to play, and if you excel and you do the work and you provide results, you are going to see an expanded role. And I think that's an invaluable lesson. And, in a week or 2 weeks, we may forget all about this streak. But right now, I think it was an important message for Alain Vigneault to send to a Ranger team that's been very, very good, but also plays in the hardest division in hockey right now.
Yeah, and also too, they're definitely going to need to get Nash back in the lineup. And I know he tweaked his groin, but he's been their best winger. So once it looks like he's scheduled to skate today in practice. So hopefully he's back in the lineup on Thursday in Dallas. I'm wondering, last year, you look at Montreal, they were basically 500, 38, 38, and 6 last year. They've already won 19 games this season. Little hiccup against Boston, but they won 3 out of 5. They always seem to respond. They got a plus 28. What's been the difference with Montreal early on this year?
Well, the simple answer is Carey Price, but that, I think it's way more than that. And I think, it will be interesting to see them now. David Desharnais out, Alex Galchenyuk out of the lineup. So the first kind of injury adversity for this team, it does begin and end with Carey Price, right? The world's best goaltender. So that's no problem. The guy I was so fascinated about was Alexander Radulov, right? The guy that, who knew what he was going to be like coming back left the NHL with a pretty bad taste in everyone's mouths, given his departure from the Nashville Predators, breaking curfew, back in 2012. But he has been the model citizen in Montreal, and he's done everything they've asked him to do and more. He's become a leader there. He can do things at both ends of the ice. He's an absolute beast. And I guess what's interesting for me is, the knock on the Canadiens, notwithstanding when Carey Price was injured and they were just terrible. But is this a team that's Stanley Cup ready? Could they, finally bring a Stanley Cup back north of the border for the first time since the Canadiens did it in '93? Was that they weren't big enough and that they were a team that could get pushed around in the playoffs. Radulov, for me, adds that kind of element up front, a little bit of snarl, lots of size, lots of skill. He makes them a different team. And, if Carey Price stays healthy, they are going to take some beating. And with Tampa not playing very well, Florida falling off the map, it's hard not to imagine the Canadiens aren't just going to run away with the Atlantic Division when this is all said and done.
Yeah, Radulov second on the team with 23 points. Last one before I let you get out of here. And I know it's early to say, but I'm watching this kid, and he doesn't play like a kid, but I'm watching this kid, Connor McDavid, and, man, I mean, geez. Who's the best player right now in the NHL?
Well, it's interesting. We've been asking different players that very question, and I don't know if it's a split, but I think there's still I think the nod still goes to Sidney Crosby, and of course, you look what Sidney Crosby, missed the first 5 or 6 games of the season. He's on a pace to score like 70 goals if he played the whole year. Now that, no one's going to do that, but Crosby has been, for months. You go back to the last half of last year, through the playoffs, through the World Cup of Hockey, far and away the best player in the world. But I'll tell you, Connor McDavid is not all that far behind him. When you look at the he opened up, I haven't looked today, but, a 6 or 7 or 8 point lead for the NHL scoring title. He's 19 years old. They made him the captain of the Oilers team. And I wondered if that might, the burden of having that going into a second year after missing almost half of his first year. I just wondered if it would affect his ability to play his game. But when you talk to his peers, it's the speed at which he does everything. And his willingness to all the time go to the paint to the dirty areas. He's not a perimeter player at all. He has incredible speed, which means you can't gap up on him. You can't be tight to him, but you can't be too loose on him because he'll destroy you by setting up plays. And he drives the net all the time, and he's a wonder. There is no other way to put it. And it's going to be fun if it becomes a Crosby McDavid race for the scoring title. That's a pretty good narrative in the second half of the NHL season.
Last one, got about 20 seconds. When you think of Edmonton, you think of those young, great players. I mean, right away, you got a 19-year-old McDavid, and then all of a sudden, boom, you start to think of Gretzky back in the day. I mean, and clarify this for me, and correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't McDavid granted, and I think this is back in 2012, exceptional player status by Hockey Canada? He was only 15 years of age. I mean,
exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, he's very much Gretzky-like and Crosby-like in that he has been shouldering the burden of attention and expectation literally for years, and literally since he was in his early teens. So
when he was 12.
Yeah, exactly. So he's in good company if you mention Gretzky, McDavid, right, and Crosby all at once. So pretty good stuff.
All right, NHL season really starting to kick it up. Scott, appreciate a couple moments, pal. Keep up the great work, and hopefully we can get you back on again.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, you got it. Scott Burnside. Good stuff.